We're taking a really fascinating plunge into the power of language, specifically how we talk about, the incredibly varied landscape of human personality. Our inspiration, it comes from a fantastic source, English Podcast Lab. It's a show all about real-life English conversations and, crucially, practical learning. Okay, so let's unpack this a little. Our mission here is to pull out the most useful nuggets about describing personalities. And look, this deep dive isn't just for those of you working on your English skills, though it's definitely powerful for that. It's really for anyone who wants to articulate human character with, well, greater precision and impact. We'll look at specific words, their context, how they actually live and breathe in conversation.
Exactly. What's truly fascinating here is how describing personalities goes way beyond just, collecting vocabulary. It's really about understanding and expressing the subtle distinctions that make us, well, us. If we think about the bigger picture, it kind of raises an important question, doesn't it? How can we move beyond these simple labels to genuinely convey someone's essence? And our source material from English Podcast Lab, it gives us a really compelling way to look at that, showing how real people actually grapple with these descriptions.
Absolutely. And to guide you through this, we're going to first set the stage with some key personality words. Then we'll immerse ourselves in a really lively, real-world classroom scenario straight from English Podcast Lab. This scene is just incredibly vivid. It shows these words in action, complete with human reactions. And finally, we'll break down how these words can enrich our everyday conversations, letting you express yourself with much greater accuracy. So to really get a grip on how language paints these personality pictures, we're going to dive into that fantastic example from English Podcast Lab. It captures students reacting to their personality test results, and honestly, it's a goldmine for understanding these nuanced words in a very human context.
Yeah, what's so compelling about this scene is how it instantly brings concepts like outgoing or superstitious to life. It lets us go beyond just the dictionary definitions to really grasp their deeper implications, their connotations. We'll explore not just what these words mean, but how they're used to define someone, and crucially, how those definitions are actually received by the person.
Okay, let's set the scene then. We're in an English classroom. Students are reading out their personality test results. You can imagine the mix, right? Anticipation, maybe a little bit of nervousness. So our first student, Jamie, starts reading their description: adventurous, outgoing, and easygoing. Sounds pretty positive so far, doesn't it?
Yep, pretty standard stuff.
But then the test adds a little superstitious and occasionally naive.
Ah, okay. And this is where it gets interesting, because the moment Janie reads naive, you actually hear a classmate, Jake, laugh out loud.
Right. And Jamie, quite understandably, pushes back immediately, saying, hey.
And that immediate visceral reaction, it shows us these aren't just neutral words. They carry weight. They can sting a bit.
Yeah.
It's a perfect illustration of how a word's connotation, its emotional vibe can be just as powerful as its dictionary meaning.
It's so relatable, isn't it? So Jamie then continues reading. They are open-minded with great ambition, but also reckless and clumsy.
A real mix there.
Yeah. And you can almost hear the slight defensiveness in Jamie's voice, that kind of feeling of, okay, this test knows me, but does it really know me?
Yeah.
The teacher even steps in to remind them that, look, no test is 100% accurate, which kind of acknowledges the limits of just putting labels on people.
Precisely. It's a good reminder. And then we hear from Lena, another student. Her results paint a much more, let's say, uniformly positive picture. Extroverted, generous, outspoken, and very diligent.
Nice.
Yeah, and the test also describes her as magnanimous, eloquent, and daring.
Wow, quite the description.
Right. And Lena's reaction is a total contrast to Jamie's she beams, basically says, that's so me. Which really highlights how much we often look for validation in these external descriptions.
That makes sense. And Jake, the one who laughed earlier.
Oh, Jake. He just dismisses the whole thing, calls it baloney.
Classic. A very real life reaction to these kinds of tests, right?
Totally. So you see, this single classroom scene, it's just packed with character descriptions, personal thoughts, even that bit of playful disagreement about accuracy. It really brings these personality words to life in a way a dictionary just can't.
That scene really does unpack these words in such a practical, human way. Let's dive even deeper now into some of the most prominent adjectives we heard, focusing on what they really convey in conversation, and importantly, what makes them different from similar words.
Absolutely. Because understanding these words deeply makes your English not just richer, but incredibly precise. It's not just about knowing a definition, it's about grasping the connotations, those subtle shades of meaning. That's what makes them powerful communication tools. This is where we move into the real art of description.
Okay, let's start with outgoing. It popped up for both Jamie and Lena. We saw it in action with Lena's enthusiastic agreement. That's so me. Nice. So an outgoing person, they love meeting new people, right? They're comfortable in social settings, often get energy from being around others.
Tips are often the ones starting conversations.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting is comparing it, maybe contrasting it, with extroverted, which Lena also was. They're often used interchangeably, aren't they?
They are, very often. But there's a subtle difference. Extroverted is more of a psychological trait. It's about how you fundamentally interact with the world, where you draw energy from. Outgoing, on the other hand, describes the behavior that often comes from being an extrovert.
Ah, okay. So an extrovert is usually outgoing.
Right. But someone could perhaps act outgoing in certain situations without necessarily being a deep-seated extrovert in the psychological sense.
That's a really crucial distinction. It helps you understand the why behind the what, sort of.
Exactly. And then there was Jamie, described as a little superstitious. Now, this isn't just about general luck. It describes someone who holds beliefs, often irrational ones, about unseen forces influencing events.
Like avoiding black cats or knocking on wood.
Precisely. Or believing in lucky charms, like lucky socks, perhaps. It actually impacts their behavior. And the little qualifier for Jamie suggests it's maybe not an overwhelming trait, just a bit of a quirk. It paints a picture quickly.
Right. And then we get to that moment that caused the chuckle, Jamie being called occasionally naive.
Yeah, that one got a reaction.
So a naive person is innocent, often maybe too trusting. They tend to believe things without much questioning.
Yeah, and look, it's not always negative. Sometimes it suggests a kind of purity, a lack of cynicism, which can be refreshing.
True. But as the source kind of implies, it can also mean they're vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Others might take advantage.
That's the potential downside. And again, the occasionally softens it for Jamie. It suggests it's not their defining feature.
How's that different from, say, gullible?
Good question. Gullible is much more specific about being easily tricked or cheated. It carries a stronger, definitely more negative connotation than naive.
Got it. So naive is broader, maybe less inherently negative.
I'd say so. It's a perfect example of connotation really mattering.
Okay. And following that, Jamie was also labeled reckless.
Right. Reckless. This implies a lack of thinking ahead, not really considering the consequences.
Now, Jamie was also called adventurous earlier. How do those two sit together? Are they related?
They can seem related, but the distinction is key. An adventurous person embraces new things, takes risks, yes, but often they're calculated risks for excitement, maybe for growth. A reckless person, though, acts more impulsively. They tend to disregard potential danger or negative outcomes. The adventurous person might jump off a cliff after checking the water depth and safety.
While the reckless person might just jump.
Pretty much. So reckless suggests a specific kind of poor judgment, a lack of care.
That word choice really subtly shifts the judgment you're making about the action, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And finally, let's look at Lena's really admirable trait. Diligent.
Ah, yes, diligent.
This is much more than just saying someone is hardworking. A diligent person works hard, sure, but they also pay incredibly close attention to detail.
Meticulous.
Yes, meticulous, thorough, persistent. They're committed to doing things well. They don't just pick the box. They want to master it.
You definitely want a diligent person on your team.
You really do. It speaks to a deep sense of responsibility and thoroughness. It suggests an internal drive for excellence, a carefulness that goes beyond just putting in the hours.
These are exactly the kind of nuances that let you move beyond basic descriptions, aren't they?
Exactly. They make your English richer, more precise. They help you convey a much fuller picture of someone's character. Just like those personality tests in the classroom we're trying to do with, varying degrees of success.
Okay, now let's put on our word detective hats for a moment. This isn't really a quiz, more like a collaborative exploration. We'll give you a scenario, and you can think about which of these powerful personality words just springs to mind. It's how we move that knowledge from just recognizing the word to actively, confidently using it.
Yeah, this active engagement really helps solidify understanding. It moves that passive knowledge into your active vocabulary toolkit. So let's think about these situations.
All right, first one. Think about this person. She always strikes up conversations with new people at parties and makes friends with remarkable ease. What personality word feels like the best fit there? If you immediately thought outgoing, you're spot on. That energy, that ease in social settings.
Perfect. Okay, here's another one. He often works late into the night, never gives up on a problem, and meticulously checks every single detail before he's satisfied. How would you describe him? That level of commitment, that attention to detail, it points straight to someone who is incredibly diligent. That's the depth we're talking about.
Okay, next scenario. On her last vacation, she literally jumped off a cliff into the ocean just for the thrill of it, without a moment's hesitation.
What word or words might come to mind here?
She's definitely adventurous, right? Seeking new experiences.
For sure.
And depending on how much thought went into it, maybe even a little reckless, you got the nuance if you considered both possibilities there.
Good point. Okay, last one for this little practice round. She genuinely believes that wearing her lucky socks helps her win exams, even though she studies hard too. What personality trait is she showing there? That belief in good fortune tied to an object that points directly to someone who is superstitious. It's a very specific kind of belief.
Excellent. That's exactly how we build up a robust vocabulary, isn't it? By connecting words to vivid scenarios, understanding their subtle implications.
Definitely. The more you put them into these kinds of real-world contexts, the more they become just an effortless part of how you describe people.
Right. So to wrap up this section, let's just quickly touch on some practical tips. How to integrate these personality words effectively into your own conversations. This is how you take what we've talked about today and apply it straight away.
Yeah, these simple tips can really boost your clarity and your confidence when you're describing people. They give you the sort of grammatical framework, and they highlight the real-world value of using this richer vocabulary.
Okay, first off, the simplest way. Just use he is or she is, followed by the adjective. Super straightforward. For example, you could say she is outgoing and generous, or maybe he is diligent but perhaps a bit naive. It's direct, it's clear, everyone gets it.
Absolutely. And just a quick note on pronunciation, because some of these words can trip people up sometimes. For diligent, focus on that rhythm. Diligent.
Diligent.
Got it. And for naive, remember, it comes from French, so it's naive.
Naive.
Right.
Getting these right just adds that little bit of polish to your fluency, makes you sound more confident, and ensures your precise descriptions land clearly. That's a great point. And also just remember how incredibly useful these words are in real life. Think about job interviews. Describing yourself as diligent, that says so much more than just hardworking, doesn't it? It implies that attention to detail, that thoroughness employers love.
Totally. Huge difference.
Or even, say, dating profiles. You want to paint a clear, nuanced picture of who you are, not just use cliches.
Very true.
And of course, just in any social conversation, when you want to talk about someone's character or even your own, with real clarity and precision?
Yeah. They genuinely make your everyday English richer, more impactful. They help bring those real-life conversations, like the ones featured in English Podcast Lab, to a much deeper level.
So what does this all boil down to? We've taken a pretty deep dive into describing personalities today, haven't we? We explored a whole range of valuable adjectives, and importantly, we saw them in action in that real-world learning context from English Podcast Lab. We've explored how these words aren't just, definitions on a page. They're powerful tools for understanding and conveying the intricate, fascinating tapestry of human character.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it seems really clear that learning to describe personalities isn't just about adding words to your list. It's really about gaining the power to express those subtle nuances of human character, to truly understand and convey who people are on a deeper level. And that's powerful. It allows you to connect, to communicate with greater empathy, greater insight, really, in any conversation you have.
Absolutely. And thinking back one last time to that classroom scene, remember Jake dismissing the personality test results as baloney?
Yeah, classic.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much can a fixed test, a set of labels, truly capture the immense complexity of a personality? And how much is left for our nuanced human language, these very words we've been discussing today, to fill in those gaps, to reveal the true essence of who we are and who others are? It raises an important question, I think, something for you to ponder as you go about your day, reflecting on the people you meet.